Okay, this morning we're going to talk about the abduction of Mary Lee Rodermund on Thursday, March 2nd, 1978. She was 16 years old. And I did an abnormal amount of research on this particular case. This morning, yesterday, and of course, the weeks leading up to this was not as in depth as it was this morning and yesterday. The reason being is there's some red flags in here, some things that doesn't make sense to me, and I was trying to figure some things out so I can get the puzzle pieces to match and see, number one, where her body is because she's never been found, and two, she's certainly linked to Hohenberger because of a couple of good pieces of circumstantial evidence, location, small area of St. Mary's Parish in Louisiana, time frame. This was March. He certainly had killed at least Bridget Cantrell or Bridget Sons and one of the other girls he abducted. Was it Adams or Gold? I can't remember which one was found yet because I haven't really got in depth on that case yet. But those were the two that were found in the septic system next to his room. But let's back up to how he got here, okay, to Mary Rodermund. The last episode we had left off, he was involved in a police chase in Palm Desert, California, after the sexual assault of a College of Desert student, and then an attempted abduction a few days later on October 31st, 1977. He flees police. He ends up meeting up with his sister at a rest area. He apparently steals a car, disappears, and he ends up in Louisiana. He ends up in Louisiana not as Carl Hohenberger anymore. And we have that documented by this work application that you can see here that he filled out when he first arrived. And according to Cindy Canella, everything on there is false because when I first observed it, obviously the name is false, okay? But when I saw United States Marine Corps down at the bottom as his work history, number one, it intrigued me because I'm a Marine. But number two, military tactics and military boots found at certain Zodiac locations. Now, I'm not saying he's the Zodiac. I don't believe that at all. But when I first was looking at it, I'm telling you the first things that popped into my mind. But I come to find out that was false, along with a lot of pretty much everything on there that he had filled out. So he's adopting a whole new persona, okay? He knows he's wanted in California, okay? So certainly this is what he's going to do. He ends up getting a job at this place from the work application that I can see, and then they were transporting sheet metal and stuff to this other location, which is either R&M or R&S, and he ended up getting a job there. In fact, the employer there liked him so much that he allowed him to stay in a little shack, a little room that's attached to the warehouse of some sort. And I don't know the exact layout of the place. This is from information I've been told in reports that I've read. And obviously, this is going to be the last place that he's staying when he's in Louisiana. They, the employers of R&S, I want to say, liked him so much, they said, hey, we need a night watchman. You would be perfect. Burglars have come here and stole things. You could stay here. They liked him for that. They bought him a car or gave him money to buy the car that he ended up abducting people in. And they just thought he was a super guy. Like I said in the last video, jack of all trades, could do anything. So he's established now. Okay, let's get into Carl Hohenberger, a.k.a. Frank Green's mind at this time. He ends up there, according to police reports, November 28th, 1977. Now, this is very important. The police reports that I am getting this information from, all this information, comes from the actual police reports where they're from the sheriff's office, Tacoma, wherever they're from. They're the actual police reports. That's the first place I look. If I can't find the information there, I have gone to... This is not a police report, but it is a case report of the crimes committed by Robert Carl Hohenberger, a.k.a. Frank Henry Green. And it is done, or it was done in the summer of 1984 by a deputy at St. Mary Parish Sheriff's Office. So, the reason I go to that secondly is because he was a deputy who wrote this from the same municipality or county sheriff's office where the crimes occurred. So the information that he's getting in this very large report, I believe, is going to be very factual because he has access to the police reports, right? So I go to that secondly. Thirdly, along with the police reports that I have been granted access to, there are also notes, handwritten notes. That is the third place that I look. And why do I look there? Because those are obviously done by an investigator as well. They're not signed, so I don't know which one did it. I can assume, because I've been in that position, that the lead investigator is the one who is writing these notes. And then fourth, and I was going to say fourth and finally, but fourth, newspaper accounts. Again, from my past experience, they can be all over the place. Sometimes they're accurate, sometimes they're not. In this case with Mary, I found out there are some discrepancies from the police report to what was reported. And finally, I rely on second telling hearsay information. That's the least reliable, but it is still reliable in some things. There's some things in there that you can rely on, or for me, I rely on them because it matches or it's encompassing in the totality of everything else that it makes sense. For instance, I'll give you an example. I always like to give an example so you understand. If I don't see anywhere in this report that Robert Hohenberger smoked cigarettes, but I suspect he does, because one of the victims said, boy, he really smelled like cigarettes when he tried to kiss me and he smelled like cigarettes. Okay. That could mean he smokes, but it doesn't necessarily mean it, right? He could have been in a bar and had smoke on him. But I talked to, let's say, Cindy Cannella, and I'm not saying this happened. and I asked her if any cigarettes were found in the search warrant of the house or whatever. And she says, I don't know, but the lead investigator told me one time that he saw cigarette butts outside of his shack. Okay, I can infer, unless he's had visitors there that smoke it, I can infer that he smokes cigarettes. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Doesn't say for sure, and that's why hearsay is number 5 on my list in this case. But it also tells you, okay, it's a good possibility. So if you need to use that, you can go ahead and use it. All right. I explained how I'm getting this information. So Carl Hohenberger arrives in Morgan City area on November 28, 77. He fills out the work application. He ends up not working there, or he does start working there, but he gets hired by this R&S, and I hope it's R&S. It could be R&M, and I'm going to run into it at some point in time, so I'll know for sure whether it's R&S or it's R&M. As a matter of fact, I'm going to look right now because it's bothering me. R&M. I was wrong. I was saying R&S. Okay, it's R&M. So he ends up working there. He ends up living there. I don't have the exact date that he started living in that particular warehouse, but he was there in 1978, and on March 2nd, 1978, Mary Lee Rodermund is kidnapped. So, up to this point, as far as we know, Robert Hohenberger hasn't killed anybody. Okay? Mary Lee Rodermund is abducted from a drugstore at 8 o'clock at night, K&B drugstore. And it was on Victor Boulevard. She's reported missing at 10:06 by her father, who finds her car abandoned. They don't know what's going on, if it's an abduction or what, but they receive a phone call. Now, this is where the contradicting reports come in from the newspaper to the police reports. The newspaper said at 1:30 a.m. they received the first call. At 4:30 a.m., they received a second call. Okay. Now, according to this case report, at 3:30 in the morning was the first call from the abductor of Mary Lee Rodermund to the Rodermund residence. The subject identified himself as a police officer and requested to speak to Mr. Rodermund. Mr. Rodermund was not home, and the caller advised that he would call back in about 30 minutes. Let's break that down. Okay. Where is Mr. Rodermund? That was my first question. You reported your daughter missing at 10:06, and at 3:30 in the morning, you're not home. Well, he's probably out looking for her, right? That's what I would be doing. So that probably answers that question. The subject identified himself as a police officer and requested to speak to Mr. Rodermund. Now, this is completely different than the newspaper account. The newspaper account says, hey, at 1:30 a.m., the first ransom call comes to the house. In this case report, which was done by a police officer who has access to the police reports, there's no mention of the first call being a ransom. The police says, or the newspaper report says, at 1:30 a.m., a male calls, talks to Mary's mom, and tells her the next call to make sure the father is there. That is completely different than this. So I'm going to discount the newspaper account of it, and I'm going to go with the police officer's account. At approximately 4, Mr. Rodermund was home and received the call. Again, the subject identified himself as a police officer. He advised that he had his daughter and wanted to know if his officer was still there. Mr. Rodermund advised that no police officers were at his residence. Now listen to this verbiage. The caller then stated, "Forget the police. We have your daughter. Get $5,000 and you can have her back safely." Mr. Rodermund told the caller he would get the money, but only if he could talk to his daughter. Mary Rodermund was then allowed to speak on the telephone. She told her father that she had not been harmed. Newspaper accounts, 4:30 they receive a call. He asks if other police are there. Father says no. Forget the police. I have your daughter. Cost you $5,000 to get her back. Daughter says, "Hi, I'm okay." Instructions will be given at 9 a.m. No witnesses. See the big difference in accounts? I have to go with the police narrative here. And if I do that, I have a serious, and people probably that are watching this right now are probably going to get a little angry with me. Listen, I'm used to that. But I don't mean this to hurt anybody's feelings. It's only my opinion. I have a problem with Hohenberger being a suspect in this abduction. I'm not saying he didn't do it. Okay, let's make that clear. But I have a problem with this. What does that verbiage say? Remember I said to pay attention to it. This is from the police reports. And it's in quotes. The caller then stated, quote, "Forget the police. We have your daughter." Not I. We. Small detail, right? But it's a big detail. Now, why is it such a big detail? Because when you go to the sketches, the witnesses in the mall area at the drugstore where Mary Rodermund went missing, the police released, they wanted to talk to 2 individuals that were seen in the area or were suspects. And they did sketches of them. Either of those 2 sketches is Robert Hohenberger. Make no mistake. The one has the Slash from Guns N' Roses hat on, and long hair. And the second one, I was like, oh, it could kind of maybe pass as him, maybe. But then I read more descriptions about him and how he had very noticeable rotten teeth. Well, then I went to the known picture of Hohenberger that I have when he was in the hospital bed, dying of his self-inflicted gunshot wound. His teeth are almost impeccable. So that's not him. Now, I'm not saying those 2 people are responsible for Mary Rodermund's abduction. They could have been innocent bystanders, but they've never been identified. And then we go back to the verbiage in the police case report where he said, "We have your daughter." The newspaper report said, "I have your daughter." Which one is it? It's very important. And that's why I get upset sometimes with police reports and newspaper accounts when they're not meticulous because they don't think it has any bearing. What's the difference if I have your daughter or we have your daughter? It's the same thing. The daughter's kidnapped. Well, it makes a big difference, especially 50 years later when I'm looking at the case as a cold case detective and I see something that is a red flag. And I need to know, is it we or is it I? Well, I'm going to have to go with the police report account. And it's we have your daughter because it's in quotations here. The second problem that I have with Carl Hohenberger, a.k.a. Frank Henry Green, being a suspect in Mary Rodermund's abduction is that it's completely against everything that he's done thus far. Remember earlier when I said criminals will stick to what works? Robert Hohenberger has never, as far as I know, asked for a ransom, asked for money. He's robbed. He's stolen. And it's not a big leap to think that he could do something like this. And in fact, he probably did. However, he has not done it before. He has not contacted. He hasn't made contact with one of his victims' parents, especially to ask for money. I go to the investigating officer's notes, and I find something intriguing there when he has a little 6-item list of reasons believed he, Hohenberger, pulled Rodermund. Meaning, hey, and these notes I've done hundreds of times as a detective. You know, you have all your police reports and everything, okay, but you're sitting there thinking, you're looking at things, okay, why is he involved in Rodermund? What's the evidence? Well, we don't really have any evidence, but I got a feeling, you know, why? Write them down. So he wrote down, number 1, Thursday night. All of these abductions in Louisiana were done on a Thursday night. The other ones in Riverside were either done on Monday, and there was one done on Thursday as well. Number 2, it was a chance abduction, bold, money's not motive, subject familiar with police procedure because of the phone call with the Rodermunds. I don't know about that. All those, although, hey, those were that investigator's opinions, and I respect them. I just think they're weak. And he may think they're weak too, but he's trying to come up with, hey, could Hohenberger be our guy? Very weak. Now, I always make pros and cons in anything in life. You know, hey, if there's a big decision, what's the pros, what's the cons of these things? And I did the same thing on the Rodermund case. You can see there. Pros. What? I'm writing down the same thing the investigator did. Why did Hohenberger abduct and murder Mary Rodermund? I mean, what's the evidence? Indirect, because there is no direct evidence. Thursday, yeah, I mean, because the other ones were done on Thursday, I'm going to give that some credibility. Public place. Okay, sure. Victor Boulevard's the same place where Golden Adams later on end up getting abducted as well. Nighttime. This was around 8 p.m. His College of the Desert victims that he snagged was 10:45. okay. Yeah, I mean, it's not big, but I'll take it. Hearsay evidence of something. Remember when I put that at the bottom of the list? Unless there's something there that kind of makes sense. I had hearsay evidence from Cindy Cannella, who said that the investigators spent the night in Robert Hohenberger's shack, waiting for him to return so they could arrest him after they learned that he was responsible for these murders and such. The phone rang in the front office area. That's the phone that he had access to. Here it was a girlfriend or somebody that Hohenberger was dating asked for him. And when the investigator sat down on a chair, he leaned back and it squeaked. And she said they immediately recognized that as something the Rodermunds heard when the ransom call came in. Now, that's not documented anywhere. I didn't see that anywhere. Nobody told me that but Cindy Cannella. It's not something she made up, of course not. That's too particular, and it rings very true to me. But I didn't see it. But I put it down here. Hey, that's pretty compelling to me. It fits his MO. Mary Lee Rodermund is a 16-year-old pretty girl, and she's abducted from a parking lot. It fits his MO. I mean, that's what he does. Okay? That's what he did. College of the Desert. That's what he did with the Laguna Beach. I mean, it fits it. Okay? He ID'd himself as a police officer to the family. Well, he was a police officer, right? So those are the reasons, that I'm like, okay, I can see it. Plus, the big overlapping thing is the time frame. March to May, 5 teenagers go missing. In that small area where he lives, 2 of the bodies end up being where he works and lives, not 10 feet from his door in the septic. I mean, but one of the things that I really thought tied him to Mary Rodermund, I had mentioned, I think, in the very first video, is that investigators found the Rodermund's name and phone number underlined in a phone book in his room. I don't know where I heard that. And I tried like heck this morning to try to figure out, and went back through all my notes and try to find, where did I see that? I know I saw it. I didn't make it up. You think I could find it? I couldn't find it anywhere. But I know I heard it. But you know what? I think that's false. Listen, I've worked enough cold cases where I know after 20 years, and this is 50, you get so many rumors, it becomes reality. When in fact, it's fiction. Okay? I have the police report of everything that was taken from Hohenberger's room after he fled. There is an indication of a phone book, and there is an indication of a handwritten word in there. But it's Bridget. Has nothing to do with Mary Rodermund. So, because I have no evidence of that. And because I don't, I can't say that, hey, That's a pro. Because listen, if there was a phone book in Hohenberger's room that had the Rodermund name underlined in it with her phone number, that's a slam dunk. Open, shut. Hey, he's responsible. But that's not there. At least I don't see it anywhere. Anywhere. And I've searched up and down. I know I heard it, but I don't see it anywhere. And the most important place, the police report, the case report here done by a police officer that has access to the case, and the actual police reports don't indicate it anywhere. So, we get to the cons. Why didn't Hohenberger commit this murder and abduction? Again, it doesn't fit with the ransom. He's never done it. Doesn't mean he couldn't. He could have done it as an intimidation factor or whatever. But he's never done it, and it doesn't fall in line with his past crimes. The we instead of I. You might not think that's a big deal. I do. No body. That's weak as well. 2 men, again, may or may not be involved, but were wanted for questioning. He doesn't match. He's not either of those 2 people. Because I had considered that, and I still want to consider it as we move forward, that Hohenberger is working with an accomplice. Some people believe that. Especially, there was an individual that was charged with accessory. In this case, Sidney Harris, I want to say his name is. He had tipped Hohenberger off that the police were looking for him, and he got charged with that. There's some indication that he could be an accomplice, especially when we get to the Mark Cannella and Bridget Sons kidnapping, where 3 individuals were seen outside. Again, 2 individuals are seen, but individuals are seen all the time. It doesn't mean they're involved. In this case, Mary Rodermund, at 8 o'clock. Well, these people were seen close proximity to that time, whereas with the Cannella and Sons kidnapping, those 3 gentlemen were seen very close to the time of the abduction. And in fact, I think and I'll shore this up when we get to that part, but a girl witness named Vaughn went to go into the store, and the 3 men, she said, were together, said the store was closed. And it obviously wasn't. So those 3 people, more than likely, are involved. But yet, I'm very trepidatious in saying this because I don't believe it, but Mark Cannella cannot specifically be tied to Carl or Robert Hohenberger at all. Bridget can. Obviously, she's found in the septic system right next to his house. And so, yes, more than likely, the same rope was used. And I get all that, and I will get into that. But if 3 individuals were involved in that, it's possible that Hohenberger didn't kill Mark because it doesn't match his MO either. He's never killed a man. See what I'm saying? So you have to get everything to fit to be able to say for sure. Now listen, before you get all crazy on me, just listen. More than likely and probable, Robert Hohenberger killed and abducted Mary Rodermund, and he more than likely, probably, for sure, killed Mark Cannella. Okay? I'm just saying, as an investigator, you want to be sure. Robert Hohenberger is an evil person. I get that. But he's still a person. He still has family who didn't do anything wrong. Yet Hohenberger, why say he killed Mary Rodermund when we don't know for sure? Right? At least that's how I look at it. I mean, if that was the case, why not lump every unsolved murder under one person's name if it doesn't matter? It does matter. Okay, you got to make sure the right person's held accountable, even if not for jail time or the justice system, for the family. That's one of my biggest gripes about law enforcement who just close cases because they think they got enough circumstantial that they can pin it on the guy. That's the problem with the Pam Lamson murder. They come out publicly and blame Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer. And here I prove 30 years later that no, it wasn't Rodney Alcala. It was Joe Naso. And I'll link that video at the end of this, so in case you're interested, you can take a look at it. But they were eager to close the case. Hey, let's get this one on. And there was, circumstantial evidence, nothing good. I mean, nothing tight. They should not have gone public and did that. It's kind of the same thing here. Mary Rodermund is being lumped in to known Hohenberger murders. And I'm not so sure he committed it. Probably did. But I'm not seeing any evidence at all. If that phone book, again, had the Rodermund's name circled, and if that was true, why is it not in any of these reports? Because that would be the number one thing, the number one reason Hohenberger's responsible for it. But I don't see it anywhere. It's not in any newspaper accounts. It's not in the police reports. Bridget's name was in there. Now, we can get into why that was when we cover that case next. Just remember yesterday, I think in yesterday's video, I said I was amazed when I was going through the newspaper accounts at St. Mary's Parish in the outlying areas of all the rapes and kidnappings. There was a lot. I was amazed at it. So because of that, and because of the eyewitnesses saying that there was 2 people wanted for questioning, listen, they weren't involved. They weren't seen taking Mary Rodermund by force and throwing her into a car. If that was the case, you'd be looking for those 2 without a doubt. But these are just 2 people that were seen in the area at that time. Does not mean they're suspects. But doesn't mean they're not either. Okay, I hope all of that makes sense to you. I don't want to upset people because that happens a lot when you change the narrative that has been placed out in front of you for so long. But I don't like people that just go with the theories because it's been done that way for hundreds of years. I know I'm digressing here, but just hear me out on this. When I was a police officer and I was a patrol officer and I was getting detective work, my command was giving me to do. Go do this homicide. Go to this autopsy. Find out whether it's a homicide. Do all these burglaries. I had 2 years on the job. And I wanted to be a detective. So, yeah, I'll do it. Number one, the union stepped in and said, oh, no, you have to pay him as a detective. I didn't care. I was like, go away, union. I'm doing what I want to do. but they squashed it. But you had to have 10 years on to be a detective. Now, you can say this is cocky, you can say it's arrogant, and to be honest with you, I don't give a damn. At 2 years, I was better than some of the detectives that were there working and doing 10 years. That had 10 years on, but I couldn't be a detective because I didn't have 10 years on. There were other officers there, certainly too, that were better than what they had back there. Not just me, but I knew I was. My command knew that I was, but I couldn't do it because that was the established narrative. That's just the way things are. That's what I'm told. Well, it needs to change. And I kept advocating for change. Listen, that's old. Okay? You don't need experience, 10 years worth, to be a good detective. Let's get rid of that. No, that's the way things are. Well, I end up retiring years later, and they change it to 5 years, I think. And yeah, so it did get changed, not while I was there, and it still pisses me off, as you can tell. But it's the same thing with this. Just because Hohenberger's responsible for these other 4 murders, and just because Mary Rodermund kind of fits, she shouldn't be lumped in there because we don't know. And what's worse is the false narratives that get attached to it to make it stronger. Like the telephone book with the Rodermunds underlined. If somebody just made that up, and people do, okay? I got an email a couple days ago that said that Mark Cannella his penis was cut off and he was decapitated. Listen, all that's false rumors. And I'm used to dealing with it in cold cases. You see it all the time. But then it becomes fact. And then it gets lumped into the narrative. All right. I guess that's going to be all. One of the things, and I was thinking about doing a complete video at the end of this because I've learned so much about Hohenberger, is I was going to do a fact versus fiction. And I don't know. I don't think I'll end up doing it. But if I do, one of the things, other than like the phone book, now listen, if I'm wrong about the phone book and somebody can prove to me, I will certainly put it out there. Without a doubt. But another thing is I get frustrated. And I care so much, I guess, about cold cases that it frustrates me that people just keep going with the narrative, especially police officers. In every newspaper that you look, every Wikipedia thing on Robert Hohenberger, you'll see he's a Riverside sheriff's officer. He used his badge to gain the compliance and trust of his victims. Throughout his killing spree. I've researched this guy for a couple months now. I've not seen one indication that he used a badge. Now, it's certainly a good theory, and I had that theory early on because I'm trying to think, what ruse did he use? Well, he was a police officer. That worked for him. But remember I said, well, he's not going to have a marked unit, but would he keep a badge? Would he buy a badge and use it? Certainly possible. But when you put down the narrative that that's what he did, you're part of the problem. Because there's no indication that he ever used a badge other than when he was on patrol in May 8th, 1966, that he was in uniform. He didn't have to use a badge. But that's the only time. Every time after that, remember, he let all those witnesses go that he sexually assaulted. Not one of them said he flashed a badge to gain compliance. He just grabbed them, put a gun to him. But yet, it's easy to say, oh, well, he used his badge. No, he didn't. And you know what else supports that? is that during the search warrant of the house, the apartment where he was staying in Louisiana next to the septic system, that he fled, didn't take much, just left, they found a lot of things. Do you think they found a badge? No. Well, you're saying to yourself, well, he probably has it in his pocket. It's in his wallet. Guess what? When he shot himself in Tacoma, we have everything that was on him. He had $400 and something on him. You think he had a badge? No. Well, he just came downstairs to sell the car. He probably left it up in his apartment. Well, guess what? They went and did a search warrant on his apartment in Tacoma, Washington. You think they found a badge? No. So, let's get rid of the narratives that are false. And that is one of them. He didn't use a badge. Now listen, I'm not trying to paint this guy in a great light. He's a monster. But he has a disease. He's an evil person. He's a Jekyll and Hyde. He's a liar. He's a thief. He's a rapist. And he's a murderer. Those are all great reasons not to like him and to say that he's a bad person. But you don't need to say false things about him to make yourself look smarter or more educated. He didn't use a badge. There's no indication of it. So, just a little frustration on my end, I guess. And I'm sorry I went through that. I know I raised my voice a little bit. And I apologize for that. It's just when I get into a case and I start looking for facts and I start seeing things that don't make sense, and then you try to vet them out and you're like, wait, this never happened. This isn't there. Why did they say that? It just gets frustrating. But you got to take a deep breath. Go with what you know. Use your experience. Use your, training. And go from there. Listen. More than likely, he did marry Rodermund's case. He probably abducted her. But I'm not so sure. I'll leave it at that. Okay? I'm not convinced. With that said, that's going to be the end of this episode. Fascinating episode to me. I spent a lot of time on this one. If you guys find information that contradict what I am saying, please send it. And I'll certainly look at it, and if it has validity, I will correct myself. Without a doubt. I promise that. The next episode is going to be the abduction at the Penny Saver of Bridget Cantrell and Mark Cannella, either by me or by Cindy Cannella, or a combination of both of us. That's going to be the next episode. So stay tuned for that. And thanks for watching. This fascinating individual known as now Frank Henry Gray. Thanks for watching. Mains out.